I'd like to start by praying. God of grace, may this place for connection and growth, may this be the place for connection and growth, for community and hope. May we be the people who are open, who ask questions like, where are you from? What do you need? Who say, I've been thinking of you. May this be the place where all belong, where all are welcome, where all hurt and joy, needs and prayers, dreams and love are always welcome. May this place be that, Lord, because you are near. Amen. So, every so often in the past 6 months, we've been coming back to a theme of neighbouring well, and we've been discussing good ways to connect with others. And as part of that, related to that, our current vision statement talks about seeking to love Jesus and our neighbours through being together, growing together, and together seeking gospel renewal. So some of you, I brought some paper up here, no doubt may have grabbed this. This was the idea, was that you write down the names of your neighbours, and then you try and get to know a bit over them over the time. Has anyone, I'm not brave enough to ask, has anyone been doing this? If you have, I'd love to hear how you've been getting on, and actually I'd love other people too. Because in our world, we don't easily connect with our neighbours. It's actually not easy to do. In fact, the bread that's out there, one of the requests for you, if you're taking bread, don't just take for yourself. Take a loaf that you could deliver to your neighbour and say, have this. Because little contacts over time make a significant difference. And actually in the last while, we spent some time looking at some questions. The first one was, where are you from? It's a question that pretty much anyone can respond to. And it begs stories of what people's life has been like. The next question was, where does it hurt? And there is a sheet of paper like this on the table out there. If you haven't got one of these, there's a sheet with something on either side, and it's got a bunch of questions that you could ask. And this week, we're going to do one more question. So there is another sheet that's blank on the back that talks about this week's question, which is, what do you need? Jesus doesn't ever say precisely this, but he asks often, when people come begging to him for things, he says, what do you want me to do for you? In Matthew 20, two blind men call out to Jesus, Son of God, Son of Man, have mercy on me. And Jesus says, well, what do you want me to do for you? And they say, we'd like our sight, and Jesus grants it. And in Matthew 10:52, the same question. A blind man says, I want to see, but that's what you want. And if we're going to talk about what we want, well, James and John come up to Jesus because they have some ambitions. What do you guys want? We'd like to sit on either side. We'd like the best seats in the house, please. And Jesus' response is, you guys just don't know what you're asking. But that's what you want. What you need is something deeper, isn't it? And we all have needs, and our answers to what you need would be different at any time on place. The picture in the background, the artist was reading a passage from Job, and she was thinking about a time of grief when her grandmother had died. And a friend rang and said, I just heard, and started to cry on the phone. And after weeping for a little bit, she said, anyway, I love you. Call me if you want to talk. Sorry, that was an answering machine message. What do you need? When Job's life falls to pieces, at the very start of it, Job's friends get it right. They hear about the troubles that have come upon him. They set out from their homes. They meet together by agreement, and they're going to go and sympathize with him and comfort him. And when they see him from a distance, they don't recognize him, so they start crying. They tear their robes, and they sit on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. And no one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was. What do you reckon? Marks out of 10 for a response? That's pretty impressive. I remember the day I was rung to say my mum was going to die. And I remember the day she died. And I had to go to a youth group event. And someone on the other side of a crowded room said, "Colin, how's your mum?" And I remember wishing, I wish you hadn't asked that. I wouldn't have known what I needed. But for some things, there's no solution. I heard someone say about grief this week, grief is the uninvited friend who just comes and will not leave you. It's like they come over to your place and then they don't go. If you'd asked me back then, I wouldn't have been able to answer the question, what do you need? And often we can't because we're people of layers. But to ask the question, what you need, does something. It gives you permission to consider what's going on for you. What do I need? It's difficult because most of us, I like to be able to offer a solution. I like to give you something that's helpful. I feel good about that. It's like fixing something in my house. So I secretly, I don't want to be Superman. I'd settle for being Bob the Builder. Can we fix it? I want to say, yes, we can. But some things we can't. I can't fix my mum's death. We can pray for healing, and we should pray for healing. But healings are temporary, limited. One day we all die. Now, healings are great, not fan. Please pray for healings. But this side of the grave, we will die. So what do we need? If I asked you now, what would be your response? Well, we're too big a group to do this. So, in fact, one of the nice things about asking what do you need is it can be answered on any level. You can go for the safe, the comfortable. What I need is chocolate. Oh, when don't we need chocolate? Or a cup of coffee. Or a break. And there's a lot of people here, and we would tend not to share our deeper stuff with a lot of people because most of us have had the experience of doing that and having someone trample on them. So this is why relationships outside of a big gathering are crucial. Small groups really matter. Life connections matter. So we're careful, and rightly so, because the territory of what we need is holy. But when you ask someone, it's a connecting question, and I give you the right, whoever asks gives you the right to answer it the way you want to, at the high level or at the low level. It's like we lean towards someone else and give them the right to choose what level of vulnerability. I need some chocolate. I need a hug. I really don't know what I need. Sometimes it gives people permission to say things that just give them a voice. On the hospice bed, people will say, I need to live, when it's not an option. I need to see my sister. And these things go unsaid if we never ask. And under the layers of the question is a calling out for connection with others. They call it empathy. And here's a bit that Brené Brown says about it. I'm hoping the sound works.
And why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. At least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, "I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me." Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Job's friends start really well by connecting to Job in need, and they keep their mouths shut. Good on you. And then they open their mouths, and you can see the connection dissipate. I don't know about you guys, but when I see the bear climb down the ladder to be in the pit next to the person in pain, I think of Jesus. Part of what we need is connection, to be face-to-face, kanohi a konohi. But this doesn't mean that we don't actually get to ask for what we need. When Paul is locked in prison, here's what he says. "Do your best to come to me quickly, for Demas, because he loved this world, has deserted me and gone to Thessalonica. Crescens has gone to Galatia and Titus to Dalmatia." Oh, by the way, if you ever want to fake it, and you're going to quote a verse that it doesn't exist, then what you should attribute it to 1 Dalmatia. There's no such book, but people who don't read the Bible have no idea. Don't do that. And here goes Paul. "Only Luke is with me. Get Mark and bring him with you, because he's helpful to me in my ministry. I sent Tychicus to Ephesus. When you come, bring the cloak I left with Carpus at Troas." He sounds a bit like me there. I left something behind. "And my scrolls, especially my parchment." Oh, there's no "find my parchment" in those days. The point is, Paul has some needs, and he's really happy to let people know them. And he goes on, and you hear some of the pain. "Alexandra, the metal worker, did me a great deal of harm. The Lord will repay him for what he has done. You too should be on guard against him, because he strongly opposed our message. At my first defense, no one came to my support, and everyone deserted me. May it not be held against them, but the Lord stood by my side and gave me strength, so that through me the message might be fully proclaimed and all the Gentiles might hear. And I was delivered from the lion's mouth. The Lord will rescue me from every evil attack and bring me safely to his heavenly kingdom. To him be the glory forever and ever. Amen." Classic Paul. He has a moan, but he ends in faith in the God that will rescue. And what does he need? He needs companionship. He needs his cloak and the company of the books that keep his imagination engaged. He needs parchments to write on. He could have passed on bitterness to Timothy, but instead expresses gratitude for God's giving. That's what Paul needs. What do you need? What do we need? Below the level of chocolate and coffee come things like forgiveness, connection, to be loved, to have a voice. It's not only a question for churchy people. Maori might answer justice, compassion for the land we had that we no longer have, a voice at the table. Pākehā might answer forgiveness, a way out from a system that makes money but treats people like commodities or consumers, and we're more than that. A voice at the table, politicians we can trust, enough money to live well, significance, hope. The lovely thing about asking the question is you kind of decenter from yourself to allow someone else to declare, what do I need? Now, clearly there are things you should not say when someone has told you what they need. I remember reading a book called What Not to Say When Someone Dies, and their first example was, can I have the dead person's golf clubs? And included in the list was, don't say everything happens for a reason. Here's Kate Bowler's take on things you can say to someone in need. I'd love to bring you a meal this week. Can I email you about it? That is, I'm willing to bring a meal. What's more, you can call the shots as to what it's like. You're a beautiful person. I can't imagine saying that myself, but I love the sentiment behind it. I'm so grateful to hear about how you're doing. I'm on your team. Can I give you a hug? Oh, that sounds so hard. Silence. It's a question about connection. And I've been thinking this week about why don't we ask that question, or why don't I ask that question? And yes, some of it is my addiction to being Bob the Builder, thinking that I should fix things, like as if I wear Superman undies. I'm not the answer to your needs. I'm definitely not Superman or Santa Claus, but I can be present. And there's a value in letting someone talk things out. There's a validation and a valuing in that alone. And sometimes as people talk things out, they start to, once it's outside of them, they start to go, hang on, that's not right. Or they see the next step, another door to try. And even though I don't like the Americanness of it, I quite like that. I'm so grateful to hear how you're doing. I'm on your team. One of the lessons for lockdown for us was that we long for connection with others. It seems to be integral to being human. And as a church, we want to be a place where connection is not just discussions about the weather, but we actually have something deeper than that, because we need each other, because following Jesus is not a solo activity. What do you need? Maybe you need someone to listen to you. We need each other to sit with us, to hear our stories, to go for a walk together. We don't ask this question, what do you need? Because there's often pain involved in the answer, and we're not that comfortable with that. The Bible is much more comfortable with lament than we are. To say something is bad and not have it fixed. We have a Saviour who hung in agony on a cross, who the day before begged for a way out. We have someone who knows about pain and knows the way through it. And even though answering isn't easy, and even though in our culture we've learned 1,001 ways to hide from what we need, even when we try and lock it deep within our bowels, it kind of comes up and speaks anyway, doesn't it? It finds a way to express itself, what we need. Paul talks about putting away falsehood and let all of us speak the truth to our neighbours, for we are members of one another. We're connected with other people, and some of that truth is what we need. Though I will modify it slightly with Paul's line about speaking the truth in love, just because sometimes a teenager telling you what you need can just be hurtful. It may not only be what they need. It happens to ministers. People say, I need the church to be. I need it to be this or this or this or this. And I sometimes find myself saying, I don't know if we can be that, but we want to be this. Do you want to be part of that? The question, what do you need, is about inviting someone to unpack what's really important to them. And again, I don't think that happens much in a big gathering. One of our challenges, oh good, it is working, is that we live in a world, if you were to look at the change in the world in the last 20 years, one of the most dramatic things is you just have so much more information coming at you. On your phone, on your TV, on your radio, it's just this flood of information. And I'm aware that there's lots of young people who don't watch or listen to the news because it's too much and it makes you feel bad. And actually, there's a lot of adults who don't do it either. We've got so much coming at us. I remember someone writing that if you want to know what's really going on in your life, you need to understand our true selves are like wild animals. I love this idea. The thing with a wild animal is you cannot force it to come out into the open. You can make it easier. You don't have to sit still, slow down, calm the farm, and then if it's still enough and you're patient and you're lucky, because wild animals don't do what you want them to do, it might emerge. And that's what the contemplative tradition of prayer is all about. Why it's so big on trying to slow down is they say, you don't know what's deep within us until we're still. And even then, it might not just come up. It's not instant. So I like that analogy. A wild animal comes not on command, but if the space is there. And I love, though I can't say I'm very good at it, the idea that in prayer, sometimes what we're trying to do is simply feel things with God. And in a world of movement and action where it feels like there is a fire hose of information and news just gushing at you 24/7, it's not easy to slow down. It is foreign to us. And I think we need each other in this. I actually think it's hard to slow down by yourself. We are members of one body. So what do we need? Well, yes, there's one more piece of paper with what do you need and some questions and answers on that, which you could choose to bounce off someone. I'd pick your time, look for the right time. I'd wait until the wairua, the spirit, was right. But actually, it's a great question to have in your pocket, in your kete. What do you actually really need? As long as you don't think you then have to fix it. You don't have to be Bob the Builder. You might be able to do a bit, but just to listen and let someone speak and honour that. At this point, I'd like to pray, and if the team can come up, and they're going to lead us in a song, and then we're going to do a benediction and take a photo, and then after that, there's there's a family forum. We want to tell you some plans for next year related to youth, so we'd love people to be in to hear this. But I'd like to pray as a preamble to that. Here we are, God. We are told, Lord, not to approach you as adults who have it all together, but as little children. And like little children, we are often full of emotion, and we don't have the answers we and they need. But we come to you. We're told, Lord, that you planned our creation and knitted us together in the womb, that you know us, and you know our desires, our needs, our failures, our screw-ups, and you still love us. We're told, Lord, that your plans for us are good, that you love it when people flourish and thrive, that you will not break a bent reed, and that we will have enough to get through it. And what do you want, God? You want us wholeheartedly, with lives becoming whole, with healing relationships growing deeper, with lives of prayer, in a world, helping a world find its way out of hate and war and selfishness and greed, moving to a world of justice and mercy and aroha. So we join with your Son in praying, may your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven, in our needs and in the needs of others, for you are Lord.